کنفرانس در پارلمان انگلستان، سخنان خانم مریم رجوی و سخنرانی اعضای هر دو مجلس عوام و اعیان از احزاب مختلف، نقش مخرب رژیم ایران در منطقه، ارائه راه حل.
فراخوان نمایندگان مجلسین انگلستان به حسابرسی از رژیم آخوندی به خاطر جنگ افروزی در منطقه، لیستگذاری تروریستی سپاه پاسداران، حمایت از آلترناتیو دموکراتیک شورا و برنامه 10 ماده‌ای خانم مریم رجوی.
خانم مریم رجوی: رژیم استبداد مذهبی منشأ جنگ و تروریسم در منطقه است. استراتژی صحیح سرنگونی رژیم به دست مردم و مقاومت ایران است.
در بحران کنونی 2 گزینه اصلی وجود دارد. گزینه اول بی‌عملی است که توسط خامنه‌ای و سپاه پاسداران او حمایت می شود، زیرا به آنها کمک می کند تا هژمونی جنگ افروزانه خود را در منطقه برقرار کنند و مانع قیام مردم شوند.
اما گزینه دیگری وجود دارد که منشأ جنگ را از میان برمی دارد و صلح و ثبات در منطقه خاورمیانه را تضمین می کند. این گزینه به زیر کشیدن رژیم فعلی توسط مردم ایران است.
امروز حتی آنهایی که ناباورند و کشورهایی با منافع مشخص نمی توانند انکار کنند که سر مار جنگ افروزی و تروریسم در تهران است. از این رو بار دیگر جهان را به اتخاذ یک سیاست قاطع در مقابل استبداد مذهبی در ایران که لازمه صلح در منطقه و جهان است فرا می‌خواند.
Madam President, dear friends in the British Committee for Iran Freedom, honorable MPs and peers, I extend my warm greeting to you and appreciate your effort in the middle of the current destructive war to highlight the root cause of warmongering in the Middle East, that is the Iranian regime. The ongoing Middle East conflict has caused many casualties and unfortunately continues without any sign of stopping. The significant bloodshed and destruction are a heavy price. However, this conflict underlines a clear truth. The clerical regime is the main source of war and terrorism in the region. For 40 years, the Iranian resistance has worked hard to highlight the destructive role of this regime. Through thousands of announcements, rallies, conferences, books, and more, we have shown that the driving force for war and terrorism in the region is this regime. Since 1991, we have also informed the world with 110 revelations about the regime's secret work to obtain an atomic bomb. Sadly, the Western world did not pay attention to these important warnings. Yet everyone can now see the truth of what the Iranian resistance had said. Fueling the flames of war on October 7th, launching missile attacks on Pakistan and Iraq, and attacking many ships in the Red Sea through its proxies, and carrying out more than 190 attacks on American forces in Iraq and Syria, creating a corridor from Iran to Syria and Lebanon to send weapons to Hezbollah and the regime's proxy groups, increasing the risk of more destructive wars. Unfortunately, Western governments do not have a clear strategy to deal with this urgent problem. They have mostly followed a policy of appeasement in dealing with religious fascism in Iran since the 1980s. I've come to assert that a correct strategy exists. The right strategy is the overthrow of the Iranian regime by the Iranian people and the Iranian resistance. The goal is to establish a pluralistic, democratic republic that respects separation of religion and the state and is committed to human rights, international laws, and international conventions. You have always advocated the correct policy on Iran, and I'm glad that this issue is what you will be discussing on the 1st of February at the House of Commons and recommending to your government. Your support for this solution, as well as for the selfless resistance units fighting to achieve it, is invaluable, particularly because this solution is combined with calls to place the IRGC in the terror list, which contributes to the adoption of a correct policy to realize democracy in Iran and peace in the region. Let me express my special gratitude to the honorable MPs, including Bob Blackman, David Jones, and Liam Fox, for presenting the Freedom and Democracy in Iran motion. Unfortunately, in the last 40 years, the West has not been on the side of the Iranian people, but on the side of the religious dictatorship ruling Iran. It is important for the West to recognize and support the rightful struggle of the Iranian people and resistance, and to stop hindering their efforts. Honorable members of both houses of parliament, in the current crisis, there are two main options. The first option is to stay inactive. That is the choice supported by Khamenei and the IRGC, because it helps them establish their warmongering domination in the region and prevent domestic uprising. Those in favor of this option argue that inaction is needed to prevent the war from spreading. However, this strategy has been tried for over 40 years and has only made the war and crisis worse at each step. The other option seeks to solve the main issue causing the war and guarantees peace and stability in the Middle East. This option is removing the current regime by the Iranian people, which has been described by a former president as a minority rule. Today, the people of Iran hate and reject the clerical regime more than any other time. The regime's officials and media admit that people will boycott and ignore the sham election next month. The Iranian people's uprising last year showed their rejection of the mullahs and their determination to replace them. But the power to overthrow the regime lies with the prepared and the strong force of the Iranian people and the Iranian resistance. They have proven their strength and determination through thousands of operations by the resistance units in the past year. The young generation has started to rebel. Many young protesters are in prison, facing the risk of execution, and thousands are under torture. Today, we have gathered at a critical moment with the Middle East engulfed in war and the mullah's regime escalating executions to 864 in the past year. The wave of executions continued into January and included political prisoners as well as our Kurdish and Baluch compatriots. Dear friends, let's not forget that the appeasement policy of the Western countries in the past year has not only helped but also emboldened the religious fascism currently in control in Iran. The US unblocked $6 billion for the regime that allowed them to sell more oil and turned a blind eye on the regime's increased uranium enrichment to a dangerous level of 60% and beyond. Despite repeated calls from the British and EU lawmakers, Western countries and the European Union decided not to put the IRGC on their terrorist blacklist. These concessions have given the regime and its IRGC more confidence in pursuing their suppression, execution, terrorism, and warmongering. If the West had taken a more decisive stance, it could have stopped the regime from engaging in war. Only speaking out against the regime without any practical measures and imposing sanctions on a few IRGC commanders or officials will not stop this regime. Today, everyone who has a doubt, and even countries with significant interests, cannot ignore that the head of the snake of warmongering and terrorism is in Tehran under the rule of the mullahs. So, once again, I urge the world to adopt a firm policy against the clerical regime in Iran that is essential for peace in the region and the world. Thank you all very much.